Okay, folks, we'll call this meeting to order. Can I have an approval of the agenda, please? Lisa and Joe. All in favor? Carried. Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there's no close. We'll go to this.
So I have a question. So this action that we're here for this evening, it speaks to a company and the mayor is not here. What's the connection for pecuniary interest?
I'm not 100% sure on that, but he did declare a conflict.
So what is the conflict?
I don't know, Madam Clerk. Do we have to disclose that?
Just give me 1 second. Let me just find my camera here. Didn't realize my camera is not clicked on. Here we go. At this time, I'm not able to disclose that. However, as you know, any conflicts that are declared are posted publicly on our website. So at such time as I can get that up, of anything that we have received, I will post that and I can certainly make that available to members of council.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor. We'll now move on to the singing of the national anthem.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, David Nairn. I'd now like to read the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa of the Three Fires Confederacy. There's a few announcements tonight. This meeting is being aired on public television and or streamed live and may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name is part of the public record and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Any member of the public connecting via telephone is reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute. Please remain muted until the chair requests comments or questions from the public. I'll now outline the procedure that we're going to follow tonight. Anyone who would like to speak to this matter is to call 1-289-801-5774 and enter conference ID number 311-724-795#. Callers will be invited to provide their questions or comments following the conclusion of this meeting and presentation. Any member of the public connecting via telephone is reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute. Please remain muted until the chair requests comments or questions from the public. Anyone who wants to be notified of further consideration of this topic may submit their name, phone number, mailing address, and email address to planning@orangeville.ca or call 519-941-0440 extension 2254 and reference file number RZ2022-02. Please note any information collected is a matter of public record. And we'll start off tonight with a presentation by Laura Russell, our senior planner. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just share my screen. Everybody see that okay?
Looks good.
Perfect. Good evening, members of council and those in attendance. Tonight's public meeting is being held in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to share information about the application with council and members of public, to obtain any comments and answer any questions. A recommendation or decision on the application will not be made tonight. An information report has also been included on this evening's agenda and provides more detail about the application. The agent is in attendance and will be providing more details as part of their presentation. They will also be able to answer any specific questions raised by council and members of the community. The zoning bylaw amendment application was filed by MHBC on behalf of Randall Realty on May 25th, 2020, and was deemed complete by the town on June 3rd, 2022. The application proposes to permit the conversion of the existing place of worship into a mixed-use building, which includes 8 residential units, 184 square meters of flex community space, with an additional 165 square meters of cafe uses in the basement. The subject land is located on the northwest corner of Zina Street and First Street and is municipally known as 3 Zina Street. It has a total lot area of approximately 0.07 hectares, with approximately 47 meters of frontage along Zina and 15 meters of frontage along First Street. The subject land currently contains a 4-story place of worship and is accessible by vehicles through a lane from Zina Street. The property is surrounded by a variety of uses, including residential, commercial, and institutional. The application proposes the conversion of the existing place of worship into a mixed-use building. This includes 8 residential units and 184 square meters of flex space and 165 square meters of cafe uses in the basement. At this time, the applicant is proposing that 6 of the 8 units be designed to accommodate seniors. The property currently contains 6 parking spaces with 1 additional parking space within the town's right-of-way. These are proposed to remain. The parking spaces are proposed to be used solely for the residential units, with no spaces for the non-residential uses. Renovations required for this development include predominantly internal conversion with exterior facade upgrades, and there are no proposed changes to the building footprint, height, or mass of the building. The applicant will provide additional details in their presentation. The subject land is designated restricted commercial residential in the town's official plan, which permits commercial and residential uses, either alone or in combination. The commercial uses are listed on the slide here. Restricted commercial residential areas are the portions between Broadway and First Street corridors leading to and from the central business district. These areas are intended to provide an interconnecting linkage between the central business district and the general commercial area in the Highway 10 corridor north of First Street. The predominant development is generally converted house form buildings. An official plan amendment is not required. The subject land is zoned institutional in the town zoning bylaw, which permits a range of uses as listed on the slide. In order to permit the development, a zoning bylaw amendment is required. The amendment proposes to rezone the subject lands to restricted commercial residential, bringing it into conformity with the official plan designation. The C5 zone permits a range of residential and commercial uses as listed in black on the slide, and the application proposes to introduce a few new uses as listed in blue on the slide. Several site-specific standards would be required in order to recognize the existing building location on the subject lands, including a front yard setback of 2.6 meters, exterior and interior side yards of 0 meters, a rear yard of 4.7 meters, a building height of 15 meters, and a lot coverage of 63%. Town staff are still in the process of gathering comments from internal departments and external agencies. However, comments received to date have expressed no concerns. And in terms of public comments, we have received several inquiries from the community. However, we have not received any formal comments. So today we held the statutory public meeting, and in terms of next steps, we'll await receipt of all of the comments, both internal and external, to be followed by a resubmission by the applicant. And in the future, staff will prepare a recommendation report for a council decision. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. We'll move on. We'll now have a presentation by Julianne von Westerholt of MHBC Planning. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Good evening, members of council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Julianne von Westerholt. I'm an associate at MHBC Planning, and I'm here on behalf of our client, Randall Realty, and the adaptive reuse mixed proposal at 3 Zina Street. Next slide, please.
There's
We haven't
currently
got
no
any-
presentation being
Are you-
shared.
Yes,
Pardon
we
me?
haven't seen a presentation. It's not
There's
being
no
shared.
there's no presentation being shared yet.
Oh, so I have to share it. Okay, I thought you would keep advancing it. Sorry about that.
I could share
That's
it,
not-
Julianne, if you would like me to.
Oh, if it's easier, sure, that's fine. Yeah.
It doesn't. Yep, I can do that.
Okay, thanks, Larissa. I appreciate that. I could do it as well, but every municipality does it a little bit differently, so my apologies. All right, so I'm at slide number 2. The project is an existing building that was used as a former church, and it's being converted, proposed to be converted into a mixed-use development with 8 residential apartment units, 6 of which are geared towards seniors. In the former annex portion of the building, which is the 1975 addition to the building, and the community flex space in the former sanctuary, as well as the basement cafe in the annex building. This slide, the slide just showed the collaborative efforts of the various members of the project team. The subject lands at 3 Zina Street are on the northwest corner of 1st and Zina Street, as identified in the red dashed line. Some of this will be a little bit repetitive, so I'm going to go through it a little bit quicker, as Larissa gave us a very detailed presentation already. As shown in the aerial photo, this site is located just 1 block north of the Central Business District in the town of Orangeville. The neighborhood contains a mix of single detached homes as well as small businesses, particularly along this street. Lands to the west also consist of single detached residential uses, while lands to the south are predominantly commercial along the Central Business District. Next slide, please. This is a rendering that shows what the proposed changes to the building will be. As you can see, it's a bit of a refresh for the total of 8 apartments, 6 of which again are geared to senior, 2 of which are more loft style apartments. They're also a little bit larger in size. There's 184 square meters, or just under 2,000 square feet of a community flex space. So that's the space where you can have meetings, perhaps host weddings, have Cub Scouts meetings, that kind of thing, or maybe even business meetings. The basement cafe is about 1,773 square feet. And as mentioned, there are 6 parking spaces currently on site, and 1 of which is proposed to be located partially in the right-of-way. 6 on-site, or a traffic study was done as part of the development proposal, and it concluded that there's sufficient parking available in the vicinity, and that the 6 spaces are adequate. There is this is not any different than the existing former use of the building for a church, where there were already only a number of spaces, and multiple people who attended church services there were able to find parking in the vicinity. Okay, you jumped ahead of me there, Larissa. I'm catching up to you.
Sorry.
That's okay. The purpose of the planning application is to rezone the property. Many of the zoning requests that are being sought are just to recognize the existing conditions on site. For instance, the setbacks, the height of the building already exists. As Larissa indicated, we're not changing the height or massing of the building, or any of the exterior walls aren't going to protrude further out, or there isn't going to be another addition. So all of that is staying as is. A lot of the changes to the outside facade are enhancements just to improve the appearance of the and to repair anything that might not be 100% in the best condition. The 7th parking space is proposed in the town's right-of-way. This will require an off-street parking agreement with the municipality and an encroachment agreement. The proposed C5 zone is consistent with other sites in the vicinity, and it permits many of the uses that the applicant has already requested, which include multiple dwellings, cafe, assembly hall, theater, clubhouse, and gallery. These are the additional uses. These would also be permitted in the community flex space, as well as the cafe in the basement with the apartments. The proposed use will complement the uses in the neighborhood and will not compete with the uses in the central business district. Next slide, please. As indicated, there are some minor exterior facade improvements that are planned as part of this adaptive reuse. The overall appearance will remain unchanged, and it'll make it contiguous with the annex portion of the building. The proposed addition also includes some green living shades. The overall integrity of the building is going to be maintained. Some of this work has commenced, all of which has occurred during normal business hours with very little disruption to the neighborhood. Changes are predominantly within the building. Some of the changes include some sustainable elements that have been incorporated. For instance, there's an entire new HVAC system and plumbing system that is more efficient, and solar panels are being contemplated as well, but we would have to confirm that the structure is able to accommodate the weight of those. The adaptive reuse of an existing building is also a sustainable form of development because we're maintaining existing building stock and repurposing it. For something else that is interesting as well is some of the interior furnishings and fixtures and things like that have been donated to a couple of places, including Choices Shelter and another church in Brampton. So that also, I think, is showing that it's not a wasteful type of development. It's actually reusing and repurposing even the equipment that was inside. Next slide, please. So this site plan shows just a couple of the units. I selected the loft units because they were a little bit larger and easier to see on this slide. And it also on the right-hand side of the slide will show at the top, it shows the proposed sanctuary space and the flex space that is available. And the lower part of the right-hand side will show where the cafe will be located. Thanks, Larissa, for your help with that. As mentioned, 8 units in total, 6 for seniors, 2 loft style. We are in a housing crisis, and these units, although not many, will help contribute towards providing Orangeville with a few more additional units for either seniors or anyone who chooses to live in this area. Early discussions with the executive director of the community living for Dufferin has also occurred, and it's my understanding that further discussions have been endorsed by the board of directors. So that's encouraging too in terms of the future users of this site. Next slide, please. This is a rendering showing the proposed cafe, and which it will be in the lower portion of the annex portion of the building, so the 1975 edition. And there, as indicated before, there will be an encroachment agreement required for this portion, and it's the portion really that are the stairs and the ramp, I believe, that are in the right of way. So for that purpose, an encroachment agreement with the town will be required. So this just gives you an idea of what it'll likely look like once it's completed. Next slide, please. The next two slides will show basically some of the before and after and what we can expect from the improvements. So this is a nice comparator, gives you an idea of what the building will look like once completed. The overall integrity of the building has been maintained with just some additional windows, obviously, which would be great for the apartment units that are proposed in the annex portion of the building. Next slide, please. And similarly here, you can see that the overall integrity of the building has been maintained with some enhancements and actually bringing it a little bit more into more of a contemporary feel with some of the black elements that have been added without compromising the integrity of the shape and the former sanctuary of the building. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the provincial growth plan. The proposed zone change conforms to the town's official plan. The proposed use will be permitted by the official plan and the zoning bylaw through a special policy and provision which would not compromise the planned function of the adjacent central business district. The proposed zoning requests several variances to recognize the existing conditions on site and proposes to add a few new uses. Also proposes a reduction in parking, which is appropriate given its location and the availability of nearby parking, transit, and active transportation linkages. This is supported by a parking study, which was submitted as part of a complete application. The location for the proposed use is appropriate and considers official plan direction to locate these uses to provide a transition between the central business district and the stable neighborhoods. The property will maintain a more attainable housing option. Improvements are proposed to the building and the site. These include improvements to landscaping and lighting, as well as minor exterior facade improvements. And as mentioned before, some HVAC improvements, additional plumbing improvements, and consideration for solar panels as well. On behalf of our client, we would like to thank council and the planning staff for their efforts to process this application efficiently. Thank you very much. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Westerholt. Are there any questions from the public? Is there anybody on the line for the public? *6 to unmute.
I don't see anyone online, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to council questions. Councillor Andrews.
There's actually Councillor Post first.
Sorry, Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Councillor Andrews, and thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I just have a couple of questions. First of all, I wanted to start out by saying I think that this development looks beautiful. The exterior is a beautiful design. I love that it's preserving the integrity of the original building. It kind of contains that historic feel to that corner, and I'm really glad to see that. And I think that the addition of the windows and overall the architecture of the building is beautiful. My one concern is the parking situation. I'm concerned that we're adding 8 units and only 6 parking spaces that are going to be accessible by residents. I understand that there's a lot of parking in the area, but that's not really an appropriate solution for residents. I know it was appropriate while it was a church because on a Sunday you can use all of that kind of green pea style parking in the community. But I would really love to see at minimum the accurate number of parking spaces to represent the number of units. With having 6 plus 1 accessible, that one accessible one is going to end up being used as a resident parking space. I can just see it already. So I would really like to see that appropriate number of parking spaces to meet the need of the units. And my second question, I'm hoping you can address that first of all, but my second question is, it says a couple of times through the presentation that that 6 of the 8 units will be geared to seniors. What does that mean? Is it just that they're going to be designed in a way that is more accessible? Is it going to be an affordability piece? I would just love to know what that means, because that's just kind of words right now, and I just love to know what the meaning of that is. So I'd really appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Post. So to answer your first question, maybe I'll go to the seniors question first because I think it's a shorter answer. To answer your question regarding the seniors, it is my understanding from my client that they're going to target seniors. So whether or not they're going to actively advertise towards seniors, I don't think all of that has been flushed out yet in terms of that, but I think that's what the intent is. And I think all the units will be designed so that they would be at least accessible. Obviously, there's going to be an elevator in the building and what have you. So from that perspective, I think it's accessible as well. With respect to the parking, there are really only the 7 spaces that are on site. I mean, it's an existing condition, 8 units. We did a traffic study, and the traffic study indicated that within a couple of blocks, there are almost 200 spaces. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but almost 200 spaces available. So if there happens to be a need for someone to have some visitor parking or what have you, there is plenty of parking in the area. And aside from which, not everybody wants a parking space. And I think that they will be marketed that way, that there is or isn't a parking space depending on what you want. And so people know that, and they make an informed decision when they're purchasing the unit. So that's not an uncommon practice, because today, in today's economy and market with respect to multiple dwellings, parking spaces are a commodity and they're very expensive. So that said, I believe that's my understanding from the client, from discussions with the client, is that not everybody will necessarily want a parking space, and they will be marketed as such. It may affect, it may even affect the price of the units. I can't say that for sure because I haven't, I'm not privy to that information at this point in time. So I hope that answers your question.
I appreciate the answer. And Deputy Mayor, if I may, perhaps through you to Ms. Russell, is there a requirement though in our planning and bylaws for number of parking spaces per unit for a development of this type?
Yes, so the standard rates would apply, 1.5 plus the 0.25 visitor, which I believe works out to 14 spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor McIntosh, and good evening, Ms. Von Westerholt. Appreciate the amount of information that has been provided in your visual rendering. As Councillor Post has indicated, I'm very impressed by the changes that are proposed. I have been fortunate to, over the years, actually been in attendance at a couple of events at that facility, and it had fallen on hard times. And I think that the adaptive reuse is something that I'm most impressed of, because again, in these times, trying to see a historic building of some sort be revitalized as opposed to torn down makes a lot of sense in my opinion. So appreciative to see that. Councillor Post had also indicated a question regarding accessibility, and because the target is, or at least 6 of the 8 are targeted towards seniors, you've been able to provide some clarity on the accessibility of that facility. The one question I had, and I was trying to figure this out on the rendering, and it could be just the perspective that I was looking at, regarding the below-grade cafe. Mm-hmm. And it seems to have an interesting feel to it, with it being below grade. I was just trying to figure out how individuals would have access to that cafe. And then, I saw some tables and saw some individuals. Again, this is a rendering, and things could change depending on a variety of different responses. But I guess maybe my comment, and I see Ms. Russell is putting the visual up. I think it was just after this floor plan. There you go. Mm-hmm. So I see an accessible ramp there. There seems to be a barrier. Are those windows, or would those be like a glass garage door? Is that what is proposed there for access into the cafe?
I can't even confirm that. my apologies, but I can find out and let Ms. Russell know, and she can probably pass that on to the council members.
It seems to be a trendy thing that in many cafes to have that, and it just looked like that. And I was just trying to figure out the perspective off of Zina, and of course down that ramp. So I'm guessing that would be kind of encroaching into part of that where the parking is, if I'm correct, or that would be actually on Zyna. Is that?
This is on Zyna.
Got it. All right. I
Yep.
see where it's. Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks, Larissa.
And that's all I have, Deputy Mayor McIntosh, for my questions and comments.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Peters.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Through you, just briefly, it looks good. If the green features that are mentioned can make their way into the building, obviously all the better for the community. I just offer a brief counterpoint to Councillor Post. I understand the sort of the numbers on the parking side, but there's a good example just a block away, which is the Black Horse Apartments at the corner of 2nd Ave and 1st Street. I don't even know if they have 2 parking spots, and they have an agreement with the Lord Dufferin Center for winter parking, and then of course the street's available. So, rather than have to cut into the building to make way for more surface parking spots, hopefully you get people there that are transit and pedestrian oriented, and the market shakes itself out. So I'm happy they're keeping all the spots. I don't, obviously more spots would just get used if they were made, but again, ideally the residents figure that out for themselves.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, through you, Chair McIntosh, not necessarily a question, but a comment. Being on Heritage Orangeville, this did come before Heritage Orangeville. They were quite excited to see a nice little facelift of that heritage building, and of course the fact that it wasn't being destroyed or there was no destruction. One of the things that we alluded to is if you think about it, this location is very close to the central business district, and on the central business district, there's no requirements for parking at all. So I guess, if we ever expanded the central business district, which is something that could come to the table at a future council, then it would already comply, and there would be no extra requirements for parking because of it being within that. We did at Heritage Orangeville discuss about the fact that the addition part, the 1975, the proposed is very much more aesthetically appealing than what is currently there, and we're quite excited about that. And also there is parking right across at the southwest corner where people visitors in the evening and weekend. So I'm not really worried about not having visitors parking because there's ample parking. You did mention, over 200. So again, I'm just being mindful that it's very close to the central business district. And if parking issue is the only issue here, I don't think that's really a business case to not permit the approval. So I will be in favor of it once it does come to council.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Are there any other questions from council? Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I find the parking troublesome, and candidly for everybody on this call who probably already knows, but those who are listening, I live on this street. So to me, this street is loaded with parking 24/7. I don't know where the extra lots are going to go. I was curious by the comments by our planner, Ms. Russell. She's asking for 14, and yet this is 6. It's quite a difference. There's really nowhere to go. So I don't buy it on that angle. And then the second piece is, and just my own protest, I guess, I find this meeting really strange. And it's really strange because I looked up who the developer is. Never heard of Randall Realty. Typically, the person who's representing Randall Realty, or whomever that is, would be in this call. And I think we should be more overt about who the owners are of this development. This is a really strange meeting. Anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Not to drag this on any further, but I'm not sure I agree with Councillor Taylor. Whether or not the developer is here to present the case or not, whether or not it happens to be the mayor, the development should stand on its merits, and they're good or bad. So regardless of who's presenting the proposal, let's discuss the details and vote accordingly. Obviously not tonight, but when it comes in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Is there any other questions from council? Seeing none, can we have a motion to receive this report tonight? Councillor Taylor, Councillor Peters, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Westerholt.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
thank
nice
you.
evening. Yep, thank you.
So the last item is bylaws. Recommendation is that the bylaw listed below be read 3 times and finally passed. A bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the corporation of the town of Orangeville at its council public meeting held on July 18th, 2022. Do I have a motion? Councillor Sherwood, Councillor Andrews, all in favor? Carried. Now we have adjournment. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Post, Councillor Taylor. All in favor? Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Good night, all.
Take care.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.